moving from the corporate world and jumping into an entrepreneur environment is not for everyone, and I would say is not for most people.
I'm excited to have this conversation.
Good. Well, I listened to a couple of your podcasts, so I think I have a good feel for what might work, and I'll let you be the guide.
Yeah, absolutely. I appreciate that. I hope that you found them enjoyable and entertaining.
Absolutely.
I think good. Well, I appreciate that. My favorite conversations are where it's really just unscripted, unformatted, and we just kind of basically hang out for a little bit of time and talk about the stuff that really lights us up. And I think when two people who are passionate and knowledgeable about certain topics kind of get in the weeds and we talk about them and we just kind of hang out and have fun, that's where the real good juice comes from. And I understand your background is in leadership, right?
Yes. Yeah. I've spent my whole kind of career, spent 30 years in the corporate world, and then the last 18 years doing professional consulting and coaching and delivering leadership programs. So yeah, those are my areas. And then in addition, I've been teaching at like 6 different universities. So yeah, that is certainly my passion. Although my background is in engineering, so I have a technical background and kind of slipped over into this onto the soft side.
That's an interesting transition. Is there any like commonality between the two?
Oh, absolutely. Yeah. Be glad to talk about that and how that transition happened. One of the things I had sent you that I thought might be interesting to your listeners was kind of our approach as I've left the corporate world to go in to be an entrepreneur. One of the things that we use LinkedIn heavily in order to attract new business. And I think I had sent you a link to the book we just finished.
You did,
and
yes.
We'll just give that away to the listeners as well. If you want to go there, but anywhere you want to go is good for me. I'm pretty good at doing things on the fly.
Good. Well, I love that. And I'll definitely be sure to include that link in our show notes so people can kind of check that out. But I would, just out of curiosity, love to start with kind of the commonalities that you saw between the engineering world and the leadership side. Because I think one is very, to me, my interpretation here, engineering is very precise and mathematical.
Yeah.
Leadership tends to be more heartfelt to me. So I'd love to see kind of the commonalities you see between those, the analytical versus, more the emotional.
Yeah. Well, let's go. I haven't talked about that. I'm glad to talk about it, and we'll see what happens.
Yeah, let's jump in. Whenever you're ready.
Okay. I don't know. Are we recording? Are we live yet?
Yeah, we are live.
Fantastic. All right. So, so let's talk a little bit about the kind of the differences and similarities kind of in kind of what I would call a technical mind or an analytic mind, and more of the relationship mind, the human mind. And my background is I did my undergraduate in a dual degree at Drexel University in engineering, industrial engineering and business. And then I did my MBA, but ultimately I went off and did all my doctoral work in organizational leadership and management. And that's really been my passion. Coming from an analytic mind, I like to think about things from a critical thinking perspective. And I think that's very, very important for leaders, so the way leaders kind of make decisions. I mean, what I find is the best leaders kind of have this combination of kind of making decisions from the gut, from the heart, and more from a relationship perspective, and combining that with kind of an analytic, critical thinking, systems thinking bigger picture type of things, and being able to bring those two together. And I've been fortunate that, my wife tells me I have kind of this conflicted brain of like that it's that I like doing the analytic stuff, but I also like doing the human stuff as well. And fortunately enough, I can switch back and forth. A lot of the leaders I work with as an executive coach, I would say probably at least 50% of them are on one side or the other. And I think the other ones have a little bit more of a balance, that they can do either one. I think the best leaders
Yeah.
have the ability to play in both camps. And if you're naturally going to play in the analytic camp, that is free flowing. If you can free flow in the relationships camp, that works really well. Crossing those two, if you don't have a propensity or a belief, or where you don't see the same degree of value there, I think it makes it really, really hard. The good news is you can develop those where you can cross back and forth, which was really been one of my focus areas for my studies around kind of developing that kind of emotional intelligence piece, as well as kind of understand the analytics, to apply to organizations and build organizations.
Right. So that brings up a good question to me. I know one of the things that you're passionate about is helping to move people out of a corporate space into an entrepreneurial space. And the question that leaves me with is that really the best fit for everybody? I'm not a big believer in everybody is cut out to be an entrepreneur. I think you have to have a very special sort of skill set to be a successful entrepreneur, because it really takes a special skill set, right? But is there, from your perspective, an application where everybody is able to move from corporate to entrepreneurship, or is it that special mix?
There is absolutely not a one size fits all. Yeah, in fact, I would say that I probably have a conversation at least once a month with people that I've worked with. I spent almost 30 years in the corporate world in the last 18 years before I left with Intel. And Intel was a fantastic place to learn and grow and build a lot of good relationships. And even though I was kind of started in kind of the technical side and engineering and managing design teams and so forth, I ultimately spent my last 10 years managing Intel's management leadership development for the world. But I had a personal goal, Jim, was to retire at 50. I call it retirement. My wife won't call it retirement. I retire at 50 and then just go give back, right? So when I was 50, I took two of my colleagues and we left the corporate world voluntarily, although I desperately tried to get them to lay me off or give me a package or something. We couldn't do that. We picked a date, said, hey, if we can't get them to get rid of us and fire us by this date, we're going to just do it on our own. And June 1st, 2007, myself, Dr. Ali Lakhani, and Marlene Lundy, we left. We started up this firm called Magna Leadership Solutions. And it'll be 18 years in June. Every year has been better than the last. And we get to go help organizations that don't have $10 million budgets, kind of like I had, to build leaders and build their business and so forth. So that's been a really, really good journey. But I have a call probably once a month from somebody that that's worked for me or worked with me or come out of the corporate world, particularly at Intel. And they want to say, hey, I want to do what you're doing. Like, can you just hire me? And, I'll make $5,000 or $10,000 a day and I'll just work one day a month and so forth. And I have to explain to them, the entrepreneurship doesn't really kind of work that way. And to answer your original question, is it for everyone? I'm thinking absolutely not. It is not for everyone. What people see from the outside, like, oh, you've got this really cool life, get to fly in around the world and help people and charge them exorbitant amounts of money and you make them better and get all these success stories. Well, the thing is, it's much more about an 80-20, which is the 80% of the time you have to be doing the business development, right? And developing relationships and, staying connected and really working opportunities.
Right.
And, making those phone calls, rather, we don't do cold calls. We try to help people out. And if they want to work with us, that's fantastic. If they don't, then we're just glad to be able to help them out. But most of the people that want to come into the entrepreneur space don't really have a deep understanding. And I would say most people who are either trainers or consultants or coaches or whatever, I have found that probably 90% of them uh, do not like doing business development and don't know how to do business development. Fortunately
Yeah.
enough, when I did my undergrad work, I did in an engineering and business, and my business major was marketing, right? So I had a deeper understanding of marketing and sales and what's necessary. So I like the one part of my brain likes to do that. The other part of the brain likes to do the analytics. But moving from the corporate world and jumping into an entrepreneur environment is not for everyone, and I would say is not for most people.
Yeah. Well, I think there's a really interesting point you bring up too there about the sort of the 80-20 of it is a lot of people want the entrepreneurial freedom,
Right.
right? To be able to do all these things of working for yourself and not be under someone else's control, quote unquote. But they skip over the first part of, hey, you spent 30 years working for somewhere first before you even started that. And then another 18 after that, really perfecting this craft.
Yeah.
That's a good amount of time. People don't want to invest those 48 years. They just want to kind of skip to the good part. But it takes a long time, right? To really hone in on that skill. It took you 30 years before you even started.
Right. Yeah. Well, and the other thing is, from a marketing perspective, is you have to figure out what your SCA is, right? Your sustainable competitive advantage. And one of the things that I do when people that I've worked with or people have referred to me are like, hey, you should call Kevin. He's been doing this for 17 years. He knows how to do this. One of the first thing I asked them is, okay, so tell me, like, if this was a hiring interview, tell me a little bit about yourself and what you would do, and why I should hire you. And it's always the same thing. It's I have all these years of experience, and I have these degrees, and I've done this, and it's bing, 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 right? And I just let them talk, and at the end, I ask them the same question that I ask everyone. Is like, so the next person that's going to come in to interview, what have you told me that's different than what they'll tell me? And the response is always the same of like, I probably something really similar or the same kind of stuff, right? And they don't really think of themselves as a brand, right? So what's my brand, So for example, let me give you a concrete example here. So for me, but people say, why should I hire you, right? And I can give here's my experience and so forth, but I really need to kind of figure out. So what's the element, or more likely, what are the elements that are put together that really make me very hireable of why you should choose me? I have a technical background. I've certainly got the doctoral degree that I've proven that I kind of understand this. The 30 years of experience. But the thing is if you're going to hire a consultant or a coach or whatever, if you want to find someone that has a deep understanding of the technical and a deep understanding of the human part, right, and has proven success on that, those are going to be a lot more difficult to find. You can find great technical people. You can find great coaches that just do strict coaching. Getting someone that can understand, because we mostly coach technical executives that can really talk the bits and bytes. I tell people I talk nerd really well. So from managing software or hardware development teams. So when I can say to them, I know how you feel. I can really say that from the heart, as opposed to, someone that's an incredibly trained coach. There's great coaches out there, but if they've never really done that and they haven't managed teams with Microsoft or Apple or whatever, it's difficult to really kind of understand what's going on. So to me, that's my sustainable competitive advantage. And I tell people, what are the 2 or 3 elements put together that really differentiate you from someone else? And if they can't come up with that, then I say, hey, let's do some coaching sessions. I'll be glad to help you out with that.
So that is something that I think would be beneficial for everybody to understand about themselves, not just if they're looking to be, in a leadership position or they're looking to be an entrepreneur, but, every person at every level, for them to understand kind of who they are authentically and what their giftings are.
Mm-hmm.
Would you say that's a good spot for everybody to start and really figure out, hey, what is my competitive advantage as Jim Sabelico? What makes me unique compared to, John Smith?
100%, right? In fact, most people, I have a strong belief that people should be able to find something they love to do and be able to get up and be excited about it every single day. And whether it's doing it on your own or it's doing it in the corporate world, there's lots and lots of positions out there. And I look at people there. I see people as two different kinds of people. There are the raft people and there are the kayak people, right? The raft people kind of jump on the raft and wherever it takes them, they eventually get to the end point there, but they run into a lot of rocks and potentially a waterfall or rapids. And the raft really determines their level of success. The other type of people are the kayak people, right? Kayak people in the same water, the difference is they have an oar, have to work just a little bit harder. And the key is they direct themselves to the place that they want to go rather than the place that the water wants to go. And many times the water's taking you in the right place. That's fantastic. Let it take you there. But if you see that gigantic rock or those rapids coming up, if you haven't developed your skills and kind of knowing, how to be employable all the time, then you get into some really, really big challenges. And my coaching to everyone is, and I found this out is once I knew that if I got fired, I got laid off, I got downsized, whatever it was, it didn't matter, right? Your perspective on life completely changes. You take a little bit more risks. You're maybe a little bit more forceful and direct with people, not being obnoxious, but you push for your ideas and ideals. And if you can do that, I would say it's going to be better for you, and it's also better for your clients or the company that you're working for.
Yeah. So I think there's a lot of freedom that comes from really knowing who you are and kind of what you stand for, and the fact that you control that oar. Like there's a risk there, right? But how many times do you see people who are, maybe they're even sitting in the kayak, but they're holding their oar up close to them because they're afraid of a little bit of extra work.
Yeah.
Right? But they're just going to complain about, hey, the water took me here, the water took me there. They're not willing to put the kayak in the water and do a little bit of work. And ultimately, where does that lead them? It leads them to a spot where now they're 40, 50, 60 years old and they're unhappy with their career. They're not in a great spot. Is it ever really too late to put the oar in the water?
It's never too late, right? As long as you're willing and open to learn and grow and change, then I would say it's really, really never too late. I've been fortunate enough. I've been a professor at 6 different universities. I've had, I teach it mostly in master's and doctoral programs, and I've had new doctoral students. I had one guy came in, he was 65. He's coming in, he's doing his doctorate at 65. And he said, I said, so why are you doing this? It seems to be late in the game. And he said, it's all about learning and changing. He says, I have no specific goal in mind, although I know if this prepares me for opportunities when they come, I'll be able to entertain them. And I just really enjoy the learning and the growth. So, so as long as you're willing to do that, you're willing to take a risk, I think you can be successful. And Jim, I'd say one of the big challenges I see, particularly with people I coach, is I have to see whether people have faith. I'm not talking religious faith. I'm talking about faith that when you need to have skills in the future, that you can do the investment now without seeing the result in the future. Because if everything is transactional, which is what this world currently is, it's kind of what I call the Wall Street model. Everything is 90 days, right? It's all cause and effect relationship. You want to be able to say, hey, if I invest in myself and get this additional degree or this additional experience or try this new job out, does it position me in the future for more opportunities, even though I may not even know whether those opportunities will show up or not. You have to be able to have that faith. And a lot of people, because they can't see the immediate return on it, just don't try or give up too early.
Mm. It, this might be a weird analogy, but I sort of get the vision here of walking into the grocery store and you think you only need one thing, but you grab the cart just in case. And next thing you know, you leave with a full cart.
Mm-hmm.
It sort of feels like if you are willing to just show up and have capacity for more,
Mm-hmm.
right? Where you say, hey, I'm going to bring the best of me to this situation and I'm going to keep growing myself and increasing my capacity for more. You're able to add on things as you see them. And hey, maybe if you happen to come across a great deal or there's an opportunity for you to elevate in your career or in your life in some way, shape, or form, if you have the capacity because you built that capacity 5 years ago,
Mm-hmm.
you never thought, hey, I might need it, I might not, but let me build the capacity. And now you have the opportunity to take advantage of that. I think that's a really beautiful thing. And to what you said before about how it's very transactional right now, we're very, hey, I'm only going to do this if I get an immediate return on my investment, right? It's this Amazon Prime mentality we all got stuck in,
Yeah.
where we need this result tomorrow morning before 8 a.m. on my doorstep. And it's just unfortunately not how the long game is played, right? Do you think that there's this transition where people went away from playing the long game to now we're playing this rapidly changing short game, and how does that play out?
Well, I think the transition has happened, from 30, 40 years of experience kind of in the industry. I think if you look at the environment, this is my analytic brain coming back out again, is if you look at what was happening in the 70s, I'll go back to the 70s when I first started in business, the amount of information, the accessibility to information, accessibility to communication was significantly different. Everything was delayed by days. I still remember, like in my first engineering class in doing computer programming, you used to put in the punch cards in, and then you came back the next day and you saw whether the computer program ran or not. From an analogy, kind of that's where we were, where we would do things, and we knew that we had to wait. We knew that was happening. That's just because the speed of communication of electronics and everything else was slow, and that was something you live with and you adjusted accordingly. Today, because we have everything instantaneously, lots of studies about the attention span that's gone from whatever it was 12 seconds in 2000 to I think 4 or 8 seconds now, something. I think Microsoft had done a study on that. So we have a much, much shorter attention span, and everything that we have, the phones, the tablets, the TV, everything that we have right now reinforces that as a good thing, and it's getting smaller and smaller and smaller. So our ability to wait, to have, like I said originally, to have faith, be able to look forward, has been significantly diminished, right? And all of the reinforcement systems have gotten stronger and stronger and will continue to get stronger. And having that ability to pull yourself out of those, recognize that those reinforcement systems are reinforcing something that is not what you want for long-term success, it is really difficult. And that's the reason that you want to get a great coach or a mentor or somebody to really help guide you and get convinced that having that faith long-term is going to take you there.
Yeah. Where do you think AI plays a role in this?
Boy, I'm just starting. I teach at Drexel online, and I teach engineering management classes, leadership classes for them. And I had this discussion with the dean a couple of days ago, that things have changed so radically, even in the last year with regard to AI, is that you have to present assignments and things for them to work on in a very, very different way, because AI is so prevalent, and I think it's going to get more prevalent in the future. The thing is you have to embrace it. The key is, I think the biggest challenge is it is replacing the ability to advance your ability to critically think, right? And I think is going to be the biggest detriment long term, right? When we've gone out and we've talked to companies and said, hey, in an ideal hire, what are the things that you want, in a new hire? Because they're not getting them when we're delivering our leadership programs or we're doing executive coaching. Tell us what the deficiencies are in the people that you're hiring, and they're all the same. The first thing is they said, we need people that know how to work well on teams, right? That they need to work together, not just individually. Second thing is they need to be better communicators, right? That they have a tendency, particularly, they can communicate well to their phone, but getting that human to human thing is not there. And then the third thing they all told us is they really need to be critical thinkers. I need to be able to give someone a problem without a list of 10 things they have to do to get the answer to the problem, right? Computers are great at doing that. Humans are better at kind of looking at the, all the disparate things. So those are the things that need to happen. I think AI provides that crutch, and I think it's going to be, if it's not used as I think it should be intended to be used, kind of as an enhancement rather than as a replacement for critical thinking, I think the challenges that we have today are going to be significantly exacerbated, almost instantaneously, because AI is growing at an exponential level.
Yeah. I think the nuance there is it doesn't force the replacement of critical thinking, but it allows people to skip the step if they want. Right. So it sort of brings me back to your analogy before of the raft and the kayak, in almost this concept of, hey, if you are taking the kayak route and you got your oar in the water and you're navigating through the rapids, you develop an understanding of, hey, I know when I get into this type of situation in the water, I need to react in a certain way, right? Because then I'll be able to stay right side up. I'm not going to flip. I'm not going to get tossed out of my kayak and into a problem. Where, now I see people with using AI to replace their responsibility to critically think, right? They're not using it as an aid. They're using it as a replacement. Right. Those people are slapping a motor on the back of their kayak, going full throttle and hoping for the best, right? So they're missing the skills that get built along the way from doing it manually. Mm-hmm. Right now, I believe that a lot of the people who have, 15, 18, 20 years of experience in doing these types of things the quote unquote old fashioned mm-hmm. way, where those people are now using AI as an assistant rather than a replacement, they're getting better results. Right? If you spend some time working with AI, whatever platform you choose to use, mm-hmm. It's only going to give you as good an output as you are able to give it a good input. There are definitely people who are able to leverage it way better because they're using their critical thinking skills and abilities that they picked up in the real world, and now they're able to use these tools a little bit better. Do you see it the same way?
I do, and I think there's one other nuance that I think most people don't think about, and the nuance is that AI works really, really well when you have that ability to plan, to research, to prepare, and in the moment, which, particularly if you're talking about being a manager, you're talking about being a leader, is many, many things happen in the moment. And as you pointed out, with the kayak, is if they've never, if they put the motor on the back of the kayak rather than kind of picked up the oar, in that difficult situation, if you haven't had the practice, if you haven't developed the skills in order to handle that difficult situation, how to make that critical decision, and you're not going to have the ability in the moment to be able to go back and have AI take care of it, you're not going to be a very, very effective leader. And if you look at, whether it's political, whether it's industrial leaders, national, international leaders, and if you look at them, how they are evaluated is much more in the moment than it is, behind the scenes, right? It's usually a combination of both. But if you get somebody that can't speak, that can't interface, can't interact, can't critically think and be able to get to the next question, your view of them as a leader is incredibly poor, right? And if you can do that, it really raises your level of trust in the individual. And I think that's the people that have put the oars in the water have gotten to that point where they can react in the moment, and the ones that haven't, that have been dependent on the motor on the kayak are going to get stuck because they're essentially going to run out of gas.
Yeah. It's these really random, unexpected situations that come up that really are the differentiator for people, right? When you look at it, a lot of people have a real sense of calm and control when everything is going according to plan. But how often do things really go according to plan in the big picture? Hardly ever. So it's that differentiator, I think, that people need to realize. It might take a little longer to do it the old-fashioned way, quote unquote, right? I hate to call us old-fashioned here, but like to do it the manual route where, yes, you have to be responsible for learning these skills and for figuring out how to apply that in the real world. But that's the sustainable way. And then you need to learn how to, again, embrace the tools you have available to you to kind of help, but not to totally replace.
Yeah, and I've actually done some certifications for consultants and coaches in AI. Work with a group called Simple AI, and I think AI is a wonderful, wonderful tool. The key is it shouldn't be a cheating tool. So make the decisions, come up with the decisions, expose your critical thinking process, right? And then throw it into AI and see what it tells you, right? And see what your score is. How many of the 8 steps that it created or steps that you would have created as well. And most of the time, I think you're going to find that as you get better and better, particularly the kayak people, they're going to get 7 out of the 8, and that other step that they missed, they're going to say, "Oh, that's a really good ad," or "I should consider that," right? And the next time they do that, they're going to get all 8 steps, or however many it is. But the key is the tendency is to throw it in first, get the 8 steps, and then move forward. And when you're in the moment, you're not going to be able to have that advantage.
Yeah, I would agree. In your view, what do you believe the 3 most important skills or character traits of a leader are?
Well, I think, if I listen to my clients, my customers is that they have to be a great communicator. And Dr. Ali Lakhani, one of my original partners in Magna Leadership, did his whole doctoral dissertation work. And he looked at leaders in let me get the number right here. I want to say 144 countries, something like that, around the world, did assessments. And what he found was the number one skill that where leaders were evaluated as being the best leaders on the scale from whatever, 1 to 100 or 1 to 10, that they all had the same thing, that they were great communicators, right? That is the number one thing, right? The people, they start from that perspective. And then he ended up coming up with 10 elements that make great leaders. And depending on your culture, whether it's in Germany or in Japan or in the US, whatever, things change, based around, cultural type of norms, but communication was the number one thing. So if I had to give you my top 3, the first thing I would tell people is get better at communicating. And the only way you can get better at communicating, because, leadership isn't a spectator sport, is you have to do it, right? You have to get out, you have to give speeches, you have to, deliver knowledge, learning, you have to do coaching, you have to be present, you have to communicate to a team. And communication isn't just getting better one way, it's listening as well. So that's the first thing. I think the second thing for a leader is that they have to recognize their strengths and weaknesses and play nicely on a team. Being a leader doesn't mean you have to make all the decisions. It doesn't mean that you have to be the expert in everything. Best leaders be able to, and I had, when I was working at Intel, I had 10 managers that I worked for over the 18 years. I had 8 amazing managers and leaders, and I had 2 managers that I learned so much from, things not to do. And the key is that you have to be able to. The best leaders said, "Hey, I'm not the expert here. You are on my team. I'm going to let you lead this discussion." Right? That's okay. The insecure leaders think they have to do it all themselves. They have to hold it all. Like, I'm not going to let anyone else make any decisions. I'm going to be very, very authoritarian. And that can only work for a very short period of time, and then everything else blows up. So that's the communication, teamwork. And then the third element is they have to be good critical thinkers. They have to be able to gather the information, process the information, and be able to not only give you a decision, they also have to be able to, not only able, but willing to expose their thought process to you. Here's how I made the decision. I took this information, I pulled it together. I weighed the pros and cons. I looked at, areas of importance, where the criticalities were. And based on that, based on the experience, what I heard, the input I got, here's how I made the decision. Why? Be able to communicate that in a way, that people, have a degree of trust in the decision.
Yeah. I think it's important to note too, that last one isn't in an attempt to justify their decision, but rather to reason it out loud and be willing to receive feedback if there is a better way.
Yeah, right. Because if you can do that, there may be something where one of your team members, if you've developed that degree of trust, that says, "Hey, I recognize you're taking this particular element or variable, and you're using that as a kind of a grounding factor to make decisions. And I want to know, has it really been proven out, right? I'd like to get a deeper understanding of where the foundation is for that." So you're not questioning the leader in a way of, "You're lying to me." It's I want to understand. Are you building everything on a good foundation?
Right. Do you think that there's almost this paradox where a great leader needs to be willing to be led?
Yeah, of course. Yeah. And we use a model, Jim, of kind of a 3-part reinforcing cycle. There's, best leaders first know themselves, have a really good understanding of who they are. Second, they spend time on kind of understanding others. And the third element is initiating and sustaining change, right? So that if you know yourself and you know others, but you don't do anything with it, are you really a leader? The key is that if you do a deep dive in yourself, so you know your strengths and weaknesses, the areas that you want to develop in, you really apply and look for other people's how to understand others, so you can communicate better with them, and then you put things in place. That becomes what it's called a reinforcing cycle, right? That after you put the change in place, that helps you know yourself better, which helps you know others better, which helps you initiate the next change. So it's this, virtuous cycle rather than a vicious cycle.
Yeah, which makes a lot of sense. And I think it's a really important thing for people to realize how cyclical it is, and how it's not this, one-time process where you just become a great leader and then you're done. Right? It's this never-ending growth.
Yeah, it's a lifelong process. It's you can always learn something. It's kind of like the game of golf. You can always get one stroke better each time. Right?
Yeah, absolutely. Well, I appreciate you coming on here and helping all of us get one stroke better today. So thank you for all that you have shared with us. It was a true pleasure to sit here and have this conversation. So again, thank you. Truly appreciate it.
And thanks for the opportunity to share it, Jim. Have a great day.
My pleasure.